Good afternoon. I'm doing my final video discussion on Walter C. Meloon, a minor figure in the entrepreneur history of the United States, but I think an important one, especially as a Christian entrepreneur. In this final thing, telling the story of post-war America. You see in the background these assault boats that were used during World War II and the crossing of the Rhine. We'll get to that later in the presentation, but these are products of the company that Walter Meloon started. Walter Meloon descends from a family of boat builders. These were Christian boat builders in England who made their own ship to cross the Atlantic. They ended up settling in New England. They made their home, for the most part, the entire family in New Hampshire and stayed there for many years. Walter Meloon was born in 1893 in Ossipee, New Hampshire. It's a small town, kind of in the middle of the state, with a lake nearby. It was originally a farming village. In time, farming went by the wayside as the United States expanded west, and farming moved out of the hillside farming that had taken place back east into the larger farming that we see today. It then became a more of a resort town centered around the lake. And in that capacity, you see the boat there that he built in 1919. This is the one boat that he had built prior to entering that industry. But just like with other industries, the resort industry went south, literally, went down to the southern United States. And that area saw another decline. And so after the First World War, Walter married, actually during the war, he married his bride, Marion, and they together moved down to Florida. And it is in Florida that he would make his name at Pine Castle, named after the town that he moved to. In Pine Castle, he originally started what was called the Florida Variety Boat Company, with the goal of building boats to the glory of God. And he offered a variety of boats. He was the first company to use trailers instead of trains to move boats, and so that minimized damage. And today is still the means by which boats are transported. In 1930, he changed the name to the Pine Castle Boat and Construction Company. Boat sales were understandably slow during the Depression, and so he organized boat trips, tours in the area to bring in some revenue. In 1936, he focused on powerboats exclusively, and again changed the name of the company, at least a portion of it, to Correct Craft, and it's by that name that he became known for many, many years. That company is still being around today. In 1937, he was approached to dredge and build a series of canals through Winter Park, Florida, which is even today a famous resort area, and virtually all the boats in that resort were Correct Craft boats. He made a name for himself, caught the attention of the U.S. government, who came to him at the end of the war when General Eisenhower, having outrun his own logistics, needed to get across the Rhine to avoid a lot of bloodshed as guys were just waiting for supplies. So he needed a means to get across the banks of the Rhine. He wanted these little assault boats there by the 5th of March. So the Army contracted the Pine Castle and gave the bulk of that contract. He wanted 569. 400 of these were to be ultimately be built by Pine Castle. So the city closed the streets. They set up sawhorses. Plywood was actually flown in from the Pacific Northwest, which as a transporter I find interesting that we were airlifting stuff there. There's an interesting quote that talked about the success there. For time's sake, I'll leave it to you to read it. Here's a timetable that shows how very slowly this started. The first day they built one boat. Second day they built 3 boats. So very, very slowly. Third day they finally have a prayer meeting at night, goes through the night. In that prayer meeting, they come up with some ingenious ideas to speed up production. And at the end of the day, their initial contract was for 300. The Army came to them and said, look, the other 3 companies we went to can't do the job. Can you build 400? Can you build 100 more? And within 15 days, they built those, they did it without working on Sundays. That was the stipulation they had in their contract, that they would not work on Sundays. They awarded the Army and Navy E Award for excellence, which is still on display. After the war, things went quite well for them. You'll see in the Korean War, the Army came back to him for more boats. This time they left him high and dry. They left him with 600 boats that they would not accept nor pay for. And as a result, the company went into bankruptcy, where they stayed for several years. Kind of tough on WC, as he was known. He retired in 1955. He became the CEO, so still attached to the company, but his son was really running things day to day. Of note, because of the Christian nature of the company, when they did make their money back in the 60s, they sought out every single creditor that they owed money to, and they paid them back in full. Later years, they became known as the company that introduced the fiberglass hulled boat into the sporting world. That is the standard that is used today. That started with this company. And finally, in 1974, he died. The company to this day is still run under the principles that he has, to build boats to the glory of God. Nautique, which is the company that was the first fiberglass boat, that name is still around, still the dominant brand, and accounts for about half of the $600 million the company brings in every year. You see their current offering there in the center, and a quote from their current president and CEO. Interesting fella, a guy that you don't hear a lot about, but part of that post-war group of entrepreneurs that made the United States the nation that it was in that era. Thank you.